Good evening. And tonight's Friday night reading, kitchen reading, is related to some of the outsiders, the people on the margins, my people, and folks I've been writing about off and on for most of my life. And so I got a few pieces that fit into that category. And I've been thinking about these folks a lot lately, especially under these conditions, and wondering how they're doing. This first one, there's a couple very short ones. This first one is about a guy I know that lives not too far from here. It's called The Fall of Rome. Dogwood blossoms flutter across Antoine Street. Howard Crackhead pushes shopping cart full of metal bits up 7th Street, heading for the recycling center and a couple rocks for lunch. Oh, to be uptown in June. This next one's almost haiku sized. It's about this dear old lady I lived near when I lived in New York in the mid 80s. It's called Security. At night, she locks the doors twice after hearing the voices calling her. And this one's a sort of a prose bit. And this is a almost verbatim conversation I had many times over a series of years. This is called Problems with My MasterCard. Every few months or so, an old and very lonely woman calls my cell number by mistake. If you misdial one digit, you get me instead of QVC. We have the same conversation every time. She starts with, I'm having problems with my MasterCard again. I'm sorry, ma'am. You've misdialed again, I invariably reply. Is this QVC? She garbles, sort of angry. No, ma'am, you've misdialed again. This is not QVC. This isn't QVC? She continues. No, ma'am. You call me every few months or so, or whenever you misdial. We have had this conversation before, I babble, trying to be sympathetic with Midland success. I've been having problems with my MasterCard, she pushes onward. Yes, ma'am. You say that every time. Isn't this... And then she rattles off the QVC number. No, ma'am. You've misdialed the third number, I say and add. Okay, I have to hang up now. Oh, sorry. I thought this was QVC. She sometimes starts off in an angrier tone, but the words are always the same. And after every conversation, I think the same thing. She spends most of her life staring at QVC and buying incomprehensible figurines somewhere between Thorazine and the Glass Menagerie. Haven't heard from her for a while. This is a funny one that was published, and I think Security was published too somewhere, but this one was published in Big Hammer, Dave Roscoe's magazine. Thanks, Dave. This is called Just Before I Had the Stroke. We were sitting in the back of another squad car after another 7-Eleven master plan gone south. Delbert looks at me and says, hey, now I can get my GED. And the next one has also been published. It was published in Ireland, of all places. And I think it's called the Literary Revival magazine. And it starts off with a quote from Kerouac. It's rule number 5. Something that you feel will find its own form. And this is called People in Small Rooms. I knew it was there. Connection. Kid wearing tie and fancy shirt, normally dressed in jeans. I asked, "Court date?" He looked at me blankly. You smiled and said, "Wow, haven't heard that one for a long, long time." We were the only ones laughing at this and became friends, allies from a place where ties used to mean police, DAs, bikers in court, people in tight places, and small rooms. That was for you, Barb. And here's a recent one from last April, actually. A slightly longer piece. I think this is going to end up in one of my chapbooks. This is called One of Us. It's just the two of us sitting on the bench at the train station, waiting for the 220 from Lancaster. My benchmate is about 6'4", probably 350 pounds, most of it in a gut the size of a small bear cub. His hair is unintentionally spiky, reddish, and he's sporting a leather jacket covered with iron-on emblems of oil and car companies. After 20 minutes of silence, he looks over and says, "Looks like rain." "I guess so," I replied, noticing there are no clouds. Of course, I think to myself, I'm alone with a hallucinating giant who smells like aquavelva and ripple, and his last batch of meds has worn off, and he doesn't like the looks of me. But then I realize this is the leitmotif of my life, that when and if the rapture comes, I'll be here, or someplace like here, just me and some wounded soul who wanders in from the edge of the comfortable bubbles we hide in every day. But the 220 arrives on time, and a pleasant-looking older woman greets the giant warmly. They amble off into the crowds arriving for the next train. And I am relieved that today was not the day, and that the railroad bulls don't seem to mind if I show up every day and sit and wait for no one, ever. So that's it for tonight. Look in on the lonely folks. Be good to yourself.